Well, it's time to do something on our show that we haven't done in quite a while. If you listened to Subculture or the Popcorn Conspiracy before they were radio shows, we used to regularly do a segment called Casting Couch, which is where we would take an old series and revamp it, or take a movie idea and cast it. And one of the ideas that Harley and I have been having for a while is writing a modern day updated script of Defenders of the Earth, which was, of course, a kind of iconic animated series that if you grew up watching Agro's Cartoon Connection, you probably would have seen here in Australia. And did it air anywhere else, Harley? I can't remember where else it aired in Australia. I just watched it on Agro.
Um, it probably did. Like it repeated at some point. I remember that, but I can't remember now. Yeah, I just remember those mornings watching it. It was always exciting. So for those who don't know, it was kind of the famous comic characters of like the 50s and earlier. Like Lee Falk created the Phantom and Mandrake the Magician, and they were both two of the main characters in the show, as well as Flash Gordon. And it was also their children were helping them. So the children were all brand new characters, facing Ming the Merciless, who was famously Flash Gordon's nemesis, and yeah, a few other characters besides, but predominantly Ming. So it was quite an interesting thing. It was a good way to update those old comic book characters for, at the time, a modern young audience.
Yeah, and it had a bit of an environmental theme to it as well,
It did too, yeah.
which is why I think it would work today. So let's take a look at the characters and also who we would cast in them. So Harley, let's start with Flash Gordon, who of course was originally voiced by Lou Richards, not the famous Collingwood footballer, another Lou Richards in the original series, but in a real life version of Defenders of the Earth, who would you cast as Flash Gordon, Harley, and why?
Wow. Yeah, these kind of legacy hero characters had me stumped for a minute because I'm just so used to them being a comic book or them having had like a famous movie or something done previously. So how do you kind of look away from that? I mean that film of the 70s or 80s of Flash Gordon, that was kind of brilliant. With Brian Blessed in there as well. That was great. Um, but as I kind of mentioned to you before we came on, um, back in the early 2000s, there was the Smallville TV show, and the character of Whitney, played by Eric Johnson, kind of left after like two series because Eric Johnson went on to play a TV adaptation of Flash Gordon, which did not take off and was a complete flop. So we kind of lost out on that one. But I thought it might be funny. What if we brought him back as Flash Gordon? Not necessarily the same character he was playing, but he could reprise that role. Otherwise, I also thought Justin Hartley, who played Green Arrow on Smallville, might be pretty good for that. But I'm also kind of worried that I might not be going for quite the right age as well. Like, I don't know, if you want someone a bit older, you could get like a Matt Damon or someone who's clearly done sort of action roles and whatever, but I think I might want him for a different part. But I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, so I've had one person in mind for this for the 20 years that I've been thinking about doing this series. I want Chris Evans to play Flash Gordon. I know he's already played a couple of comic book action heroes now, but he was the guy I had in mind at the start, and I think I'm gonna stick to Chris Evans playing Flash Gordon.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because when we first said we were going to do this topic, we both had the same thought for Mandrake, but we don't want to cast that person because they're already doing a similar role, which is Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, but I think my reasoning for why Chris Evans would work is that Chris Evans is not playing the role anymore, unless the rumors are true that he's coming back to do the three films.
Yeah, I
But,
was gonna say there's a rumor.
yeah, whereas Benedict Cumberbatch is still playing Doctor Strange. So I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's move it along now to the Phantom, who of course was voiced by Peter Mark Richmond in the original series. Who would you cast as the ghost who walks, Harley?
Oh, this was a hard one, and I just kind of had to look around for a while, like who would do this, and then someone just popped into my head. Like at first, I I did a bit of a web search on the Phantom and kept getting responses for Phantom of the Opera, and I'm like, oh my God, that's not what I'm looking for. But the first thing that came up was actually in 1996, Billy Zane played the Phantom, and there's all these articles saying he would like another shot at the character.
Yeah, I've read that too.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, that might be interesting. He's the older Phantom, you know, he's raising, which means his daughter could be a little older as well, so we don't have to cast her too young. Because I didn't feel like she was that immature of a character in the show either. So I don't know. But, that's just a what if kind of idea. Otherwise, my favorite thought was Henry Cavill.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I could totally see him doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went a little bit out of the box here and I was thinking of actors that I could easily find someone to play his daughter as well, because of course his daughter is a big part of this show. I've gone
Yep.
with Michael B. Jordan, a black phantom,
Ooh. Yep.
but that fits in with who I wanted to have play Jeddah later on. So I would
Yeah,
cast.
that's funny because I was kind of thinking like I would just just about cast a Black Jeddah.
Yeah.
Especially because Phantom is like living in the jungle. But then I kind of thought, okay, over the generations, like he's not the first Phantom. Over the generations, there has to be some intermingling. I don't know why he's so white at this stage.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because it's the ghost who walks, so they want to keep him pale. I
Yeah.
don't know. But if you go through the sort of classic Phantom comics, then his sort of love interest was a woman from overseas and not from in the jungle. So yeah, I really was split on that one.
Yeah, my other thought was Shannon Tatum, just because I know Shannon Tatum is an absolutely huge environmentalist. He apparently his partner doesn't like him going to animal refuges to do charity gigs because he always brings dogs home. Um, so I thought he might be also a good one because he loves animals. So he's going to have to work with a wolf. He's going to have to work with a horse. So yeah, but Michael B. Jordan was my pick in the end because that made it a little bit easier for who I wanted to have played Jeddah later on. But next character, let's go to Mandrake the Magician, who of course was originally voiced by Peter Renaday. Harley, who's your pick for Mandrake the Magician?
Well, I've actually got a few names here because as I was sort of going through a list, I'm like, oh, that could be interesting, and oh, that's a bit out of left field. Um, okay, so first I was looking at someone like Jeremy Irons, and then Colin Firth popped up, and I thought, oh, maybe Colin Firth would be interesting.
Yeah.
Rafe Fiennes as well could be another person. So I kept looking for British kind of actors. So Gary Oldman, Ewan McGregor, and Liam Neeson also popped up. I thought some of those could do an interesting take on it also. But yeah, I think it was kind of Colin Firth or Jeremy Irons might be my top picks. Maybe Ray Fiennes too.
Yeah, so mine, I guess, is a little bit left field as well, but I've just seen him in a bunch of movies just recently, and I've liked him as an actor for a while. But John Leguizamo,
Oh yeah. I haven't
um,
seen him for ages. Yeah.
yeah, so he's been in a few movies just recently that I've had a chance to watch, a few indie movies, and he's done a really, really good job. But I just think that for someone who can go between good and bad, not that Mandrake was ever bad, but he used to use his what's the word? His charisma and his kind of I don't know the right word to use, but he basically used to strike fear into like his enemies. And I thought John Leguizamo can kind of do that. Like he's played bad characters, he's played good characters, so you've kind of got that black, white, and gray that you can use for him. So yeah, John Leguizamo was my pick for Mandrake. Next character,
Hmm.
Lothar, of course, voiced by Buster Jones in the original Defenders of the Earth. Who were you thinking about using for Lothar, who, of course, in the original comics was described as a Caribbean ninja?
Right. I didn't really get Caribbean from his vibe, to be honest. But um yeah, I didn't quite go that way with casting. I I kind of stumbled upon someone while I was going through my Mandrake list and thought, "Ooh, that's someone who has some like real presence. It could be like a real commanding figure in the series." Idris Elba.
Oh yeah, yep,
But also I also saw Chiwetel Ejiofor. He's also really good at that kind of thing, and maybe a couple of years younger than Idris, I think. So those were kind of my top two. As soon as I saw them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a presence and a half. Like
yep.
they would absolutely do it. So I think I know who you're gonna say, but go for it.
Yeah, I've had one person in mind the whole time for this role, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who has a little bit of an uncanny, similar look to the cartoon version of Lothar. And Lothar is supposed to be the strong man of this group. So aside from Dave Bautista, who has just lost a massive amount of weight now, I think The Rock is perfect for that role because yeah, if you need someone to pick somebody up and throw them across the room, I think The Rock is probably perfect for that. Also helps me out a little bit later on as well with the son of Lothar as well. So we'll get to that in a moment. But the next character on the list is, of course, Flash Gordon's son, Richard Rick Gordon, voiced by Lauren Lester in the original series. Who did you have in mind for Flash Jr.?
Well, my first thought was Tanner Buchanan, who's in Cobra Kai. I really quite like him as a character. He could do all the physical stuff. Um, but then I kind of someone else caught my eye while I saw I was looking up Colin Firth and everything. Um, and that was Jeremy Irvine. So I don't know
Okay.
maybe if he still can play the young enough part, but yeah, he kind of had that look. I could see him playing Rick. So yeah, that those were my top two.
Yeah, so I was trying to keep in mind that I wanted somebody that kind of looked a little bit like Chris Evans, but could also play this role on their own right, kind of thing. So I've actually gone with Colton Haynes, who people would
Ah,
be aware of if they, of course, watched Teen Wolf. Trying to think, well, what else has he been in
he
over the
was in
years?
the Arrow series.
That's right. Yeah, he was in San Andreas. Yeah, he played Roy Harper. That's right, in the Arrow series.
Yeah.
But I just think, yeah, like because I'm a big Teen Wolf fan, I think he would actually be pretty good playing Chris Evans' son as well because they kind of have a very similar jawline, I think. So
But this
yeah,
is where I struggled as well because I would think actors like that, and then it would suddenly occur to me that they're twice as old as I think they are now. So, because I remember them playing like the teen characters, and I'm like, oh, they're really not teens anymore, and possibly weren't teens at the time. So, yeah,
I
that's
thought
where I
about
had
that,
a
but
really hard time.
Rick was always a little bit older than the others in the series as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like he might be a little too. Oh, and trying to. It just depends how he looks now. Like, I'm
Yeah.
totally fine with people playing different ages. That doesn't. bother me. Just have to make sure they look right. It doesn't go a bit weird. Yeah. Because that's what I struggled with this whole thing.
Yeah, so the next one on our list is LJ, who of course is Lothar Jr., voiced by Dion Williams in the original series. Who was your idea for LJ?
Yeah, I really wanted to find someone good. And I think there's someone in the back of my mind who I'm not remembering. And I just it's bugging me. Um I at first I looked up one of the actors that was in Acolyte and found out he's, much older than he looked on the show. So I'm like, that might be a bad casting choice. So my next go-to was Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things
Yep.
or Dallas Dupree Young from Cobra Kai.
Okay. Well, I'm going with Bradley Constant, who you might be thinking, who is that? Well, he played the 15-year-old version of The Rock in Young Rock. So,
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say that when you made that comment.
yeah, so yeah, like there was three people that played the young Rock, of course, in young Rock. Bradley Constant was the one that was kind of in the middle. He was the 15-year-old playing the part, but he is also starting to move into doing more action roles now as well. So I think he would be perfect for that part because of the fact that he yeah, is going into the action realm. The next one on the list is a daughter this time around. We're talking about Jeddah, the daughter of the Phantom, um, voiced by Sarah Partridge in the original series.
That's right.
Um, has a one of her skills, of course, was that she was able to communicate with her Black Panther called Kisa in the series, and apparently we also find out during the series, and I had no memory of this, but we found out that she is actually the stepdaughter of Queen Hedaya, who is one of the bad characters. So yeah, let's have a look. Wow, who did you think for Jeddah?
Mm. Yeah, so this was one I wanted to get right, and I kind of thought one or two names for a while, but I wasn't really fixated on them until I remembered recently watching the Orphan Black sequel series, Orphan Black Echoes. And there's a young actress in that named Amanda Fix. And I think she is absolutely perfect for this role. She's she's got that ability. She's got a good acting range. I think she could do some of the physical stuff if she needed to. Um, yeah, there's just something about her. I think I want to see more of what she can do. And for being the main female presence in the whole thing, I I I think she has enough command of your attention to pull it off.
Yeah, so keeping in mind that I chose Michael B. Jordan as my Phantom, I have gone with Zendaya as Jeddah.
Ah,
Who, of course, showed in her TV series before Spider-Man that she can be a dramatic actress when she needs to be. She also did Challenges, the movie this year, which was more of a dramatic role. But she's also showed in the Spider-Man series that she can do action sequences quite well, and also June, of course, as well. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Zendaya is my pick.
Zendaya would be good. Yeah, yeah, I could see her. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we've got Kei Shin, voiced by Adam Carl in the original series, who is the orphan boy who's adopted by Mandrake. Who did you go
Yeah,
for
so
Kei
here's a
Shin?
funny one. I really had to look him up because I couldn't remember his name at the start because it's been a while since I've watched it. And I'm like, what was his background? And his like I started watching the episode where you see him become an orphan and gets adopted. And I'm like, okay, I think he's got a bit of a mixed lineage, Asian kind of background, but so I'm kind of like he could be from several places in Asia, to be honest. So it's like I think he might be a little mixed based on what his sort of parents and grandfather and everything look like. So I'm like, okay, I think we can kind of open up the field here for looking for actors. So I've got a couple of suggestions, which, I could still change, but these are actors I think he's like the youngest one of the cast, so I'm trying to look for people who can play younger. Um, so one of them is Ian Chen. I think he was in Fresh Off the Boat. Um, then there's Tenzing Norgay Trainer. I think he's getting a bit of popularity in Hollywood at the moment. And he's just kind of, I think he can still just play young enough. But also, if we want to go quite young, there's Jung Hyun Jun, who was the young boy in the Korean horror Parasite.
Yeah. Okay.
But then depends if he can even speak English. But that's the ultimate young actor, that one.
Yeah, definitely. So I also went for an Asian actor as well. I've gone for Isaac Wang, who is in a new movie called Diddy. It's his first ever film. But there is just something about this kid. Like when I watched Diddy for the first time, I thought this kid is going to win an Oscar one day. So Isaac Wang is my pick for that role. Now, I think we may have some other ones, but we are running out of time. Ming the Merciless, who of course is the lead villain in the series, Harley. Who
Yep.
did you have down for Ming the Merciless, who was originally voiced by Ron Feenberg?
Yeah, well, I know there's been a thing in recent times to not make Ming so Asian because it could be seen as racist to make the villain Asian. But I mean, I think we should lean into it and cast really good Asian actors. And with that in mind, if you've seen the recent Star Wars series, The Acolyte, Lee Jung-jae was amazing as an actor in that. And he didn't even speak English at the time. And he was so convincing. I want him to play Ming. He could totally command that and it would allow for someone who could bring out more of a character and not just be a one-dimensional villain. I would love to see him play that.
Well, I've gone with John Cho because recently I just watched Afraid, a brand new horror movie, and of course, you and I grew up watching him, and of course, in Harold and Kumar, where
Yeah.
he's largely doing comedy. But of course, since then he's done Star Trek. Now he's doing horror movies as well. So I picked John Cho for my Ming the Merciless because even if you did want to go down the route of putting green skin on him, like they have in some of the more modern kind of versions of Ming, you could easily do that as well. Now we are running out of time very quickly, but did you have any other characters in there that you had roles for as well?
Yep. Well, let's see. Ming's children, Prince Crotan. I think either Manny Jacinto, who I just think is fantastic and can absolutely do action and stuff, or Joe Seo, who is in Cobra Kai. He was kind of like the bully in the early season, and now he's back in like the the opposite dojo, the rival dojo. Or we've got Princess, is it Castra, I think, is
Yeah.
Ming's daughter. I totally want Lauren Tsai. I think she's a fantastic actress. She would make something really interesting. And as a dynamic for those three actors, I think should be those three would go together really well. Also, I think an important one is Kurt Walker, who is the Phantom's older brother, who didn't manage to achieve the title of Phantoms and lost out to his brother. So I'm thinking maybe Matt Damon for that one.
Okay. Yeah. Good pick. Good pick. I
Oh,
had
and there was you might have Queen Hedaya, and I know that she's after like some necklace that used to belong to the character of Graviton. I thought maybe Clive Standen for Graviton, but I didn't cast Queen Hedaya. But yeah, what about you?
I didn't do a Queen Hedaya, but I did do someone to voice Dynak X because, of course, Dynak X
Yep.
was supposed to be the voice of Dynak X was supposed to be in the series the voice of Flash Gordon's wife that had passed away. So I thought if I ever wanted to do a flashback scene with that wife, I want someone that I know works well with Chris Evans. So I went with Scarlett Johansson, which of course is a little bit of an in joke because
Yeah.
she did the voice for the computer in the movie Her as well. So yeah,
I thought it might also be fun, like the original actress Diane Pershing is still around, so like she could bring back that same voice. But yeah, you're right. I forgot about the fact that yeah, it was based on Dale's voice. So yeah, I didn't think about that. That's a good idea, that one.
definitely. Well, that is our picks for who we would cast in a modern day, real life version of Defenders of the Earth. Let us know what you think. Did we get it right? Do you have any other ideas for the parts as well? If so, hit us up on our socials and let us know what you thought of our picks.